Thank you so very much, Sam. So hi everybody. This last training, so we've been doing training since earlier today. There's 3 trainings total. Um, and so they're being recorded. One of them is already uploaded to our YouTube channel, so I'll be able to make sure you all have the links when I'm finished uploading all of them. And total, if you watch all of them, it'll be 5 hours of conflict management training that you would have gotten. So my goal was to, give people as much as I could all in one day. And so this last training that we're doing today, it is about how to ask questions without making things worse. And I think that very often when we ask people questions, we don't realize that the question is pissing people off in 2 seconds from getting us slapped. And so people get upset and we're like, I just asked a question. What's wrong with them? Not realizing there's something about the way we ask the question or the intention behind our question or even the question itself that might escalate people or make people feel defensive. And so we're going to talk about what we're going to be learning is open-ended questions. And first, we're going to talk about some of the dangers of what we call closed-ended questions. So a closed-ended question is something that people can only answer yes or no to, right? Do you, did you, are you, right? Those kind of questions that kind of start like that. And so I'm gonna ask you all a question and get your response to how it feels, right? So let's say are you all you're still in like a lot of stay-at-home mandates and only essential workers are supposed to be going out and stuff like that?
We started to open up.
Say it again.
We started to open up, but it's
little bit by little bit.
Contracting again.
Right. Yeah. We'll probably all be just back stuck in the house through the fall and into the, it's one long day at this point anyway. So let's say you are at home and you live with some kind of essential worker who has to go out every day. You've been home all day doing whatever it is you're doing, and the person comes home and they say to you, did you do the dishes yet? So let's just pause right there. How does that question make you feel? Did you do the dishes yet?
Terrible.
How come? What's terrible about it? How come?
It's an accusatory question.
It's an accusatory question. Very good. Was somebody else about to say something?
Well, can't you see for yourself whether I washed the dishes or not?
That's right. That's right. First of all, go to the kitchen first before you come in here asking me all kind of crazy questions. Right. Okay. So what you are reacting to right now is that this is a closed-ended question. So a few things happen when people ask a closed-ended question. One thing is these questions often make people feel defensive and judged. And so that's the part where you're like, I feel accused, right? Or sometimes the questions just are not helpful. So like, why do I have to answer this when you can go in the kitchen for yourself and get the answer, right? And so the reason that people feel accused or defensive or judged by closed-ended questions is because very often a closed-ended question already has built into it what the person thinks. So for example, if I ask you, did you do the dishes? What am I already telling you I think?
That you didn't.
That's right. I'm thinking maybe you didn't do them, which is why I'm asking you. And so people automatically start to feel defensive. They're defending themselves against an opinion that your question already tells them that you have. So they start defending themselves against your opinion. Also, closed-ended questions don't allow space for more than yes or no. And so the question itself makes a person feel trapped, that I have to give a yes or no answer, when most of the time life's questions need more than yes or no answers, right? Because whether I did or didn't do the dishes today is very much dependent on a whole bunch of other stuff that happened in my day. And so it can appear that, well, I mean, you've just been home, working from home all day. Let me tell you something about this pandemic. I got busier after outside closed than I was before outside closed. I can't wait for outside to open just so I can like not be so busy. So it would seem like, oh, you just had to be in the house, but like my eyes are tired. I don't remember when the last time I peed, like because I'm not drinking water, I'm not eating. The dog keeps getting on my nerves. I think the dog is confused about why I'm still in the house this much. Like, you know, a lot of things are happening in pandemic world. And so what can seem like a simple question, did I do the dishes? I have a long explanation now about the no that I know you don't want to hear, right? Or yes, I washed them, but then that meant the laundry that I was trying to do, blah, 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 right? And so yes or no also makes people feel stuck. It does not ask them about what is important to them, right? Because now you have decided what the important information is that you want to know, and it might not be the thing that's actually important for them to talk about. So notice the difference between somebody coming home and asking you, did you do the dishes? And somebody coming home and going, hey, what did you do today? That's different. Right? What did you do today is an open-ended question. And it now gives me an opportunity to talk about what I think is important about what happened in my day-to-day and what kind of things I did, right? So I'm going to put this closed-ended question handout on the screen. Okay, so on the screen right now, you are seeing the open-ended questions handout. I'm also going to put it in the chat. And if for some reason you can't click on it and download it, I'm also going to put my email address in here. And so you can email me, and sometime tomorrow, I'll be able to email you the handouts that you, this handout that you, if you can't open it. But it's on the screen right now. So this says open-ended questions can keep people from getting defensive. So that's the first thing we talked about, right? Because you are not asking something that is based in an opinion you already have, it means that when you ask an open-ended question, people are not defending themselves against something they think you already think, right? And so also they allow people to focus on what's important to them. Also, what can be important about this is this means you can ask different people the same question and get very different answers, right? And so if I ask people on this call, so let's try it real quick. All right. So Betsy, do you have siblings?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And let's see. Paula, do you have siblings?
Yes, I do.
All right. So those were the closing questions I just asked, right? They got me very little information. Yes, they both have siblings, okay? Now, the second question. So Betsy, how many siblings do you have?
2 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay. Paula, how many siblings do you have?
1 sister and 2 brothers.
What was that, the flip?
Right.
Crazy. I couldn't have planned that better. Okay, so that's what we call a specific question. So now I asked, so the first one was, do you have, but that was yes or no, close-ended. This second question maybe got me a little bit more information. So this is what we call a specific question. How many do you have? So a specific question is there's a specific piece of information I want to know, and that's what I'm asking about. So the how many do you have, they told me not just a number, but I got a little bit more information. They told me the gender of their siblings as well. Okay, so then this third question is going to be the open-ended question. Betsy, what would you like to tell me about your siblings?
My siblings live all around the country. One lives in Seattle, one lives in North Carolina, and one lives in Pennsylvania. So I don't see them very much at all. And that's a drag.
Okay, that it?
I think so, just for now.
Okay, Paula, what would you like to tell us about your siblings?
All of my siblings live in Georgia. I am close to my sister. I would say I'm getting a little bit closer to my brothers. Actually, during this COVID situation that we find ourselves in, we've actually spent more family time on Zoom. So it's been an interesting experience.
Okay.
And we're all a year apart.
Okay, and you're all a year apart. Okay. All right, so notice what just happened right now. So I was taking notes so that I could remember what Betsy and Paula just said. So I asked the same question to both people, but I got very different answers, right? So this question was, what would you like to tell me about your siblings?
So you got what was important to them.
What was important to them. So the first question was close-ended. It was important to me and got very little information. Do you have siblings? Yes or no? So they gave me a yes. Second, how many siblings? Okay, I got 3 for both of them, right, as the answer. But then, what do you want to tell me about them? Now, these answers are going to be very different, right? And so a few things to pay attention to. So one, Betsy, what was important to her was to say, oh, my siblings live all around, and so I don't really get to see them as much as I would like to, right? And that's what she wanted to talk about right now. A lot of times, I want us to notice how often we sometimes ask people questions based on what we think is important about something, because we've been through that experience before. So for example, I have siblings, and I just talked to Betsy who has siblings. So now if I take that experience with myself and Betsy and I start asking Paula questions, and I started at close-ended questions, I would start with, from my own experience, do you have brothers that some get on your nerves and some you love and some you like to punch? Right? Because that's my experience with my siblings. Betsy's experience, she's going to be like, hey, Paula, do you see your siblings enough? Right? And so, so that's what happens when we are talking to somebody, we hear them having an experience, and we start asking them questions, not about what they are saying, but we start asking them questions about, oh, I know about this kind of thing. Let me ask you questions that I think are relevant from my experience, right? And so that again would limit, because that's none of the stuff Paula really wanted to talk about. A little bit how much she sees them, but her experience is really about, well, wait a minute, it's actually interesting now that I am getting closer to my brothers because of the pandemic. Like now we're on Zoom more often, and it's just like interesting to really like pay attention to. And we're, we all live in Georgia. I'm really close to my sister. That's what she wanted to talk about, right? And so Open-ended question gets you more information than you could have ever expected, but also more than a closed-ended question is going to get you, because closed-ended questions assume what you want somebody to already tell you. And so open-ended questions allow people to focus on what's actually important to them. It also helps to keep information flowing, right? Because notice that when Betsy finished, I said, "Is that it?" which was a closed-ended question, right? And so she said, "Yes, for right now." Had I asked her an open-ended question, right? So for instance, she said, "Oh, my siblings we live all around." If I had said, "Oh, say more about when you say they live all around, say more about that." Then she would have went into talking about where different people live and maybe even how that impacts her, right? And so it would have kept information flowing. When Paula says it's an interesting experience, I could say, "Oh, when you say it's an interesting experience, what's that about? What do you mean by that?" Then she would have went into what's interesting about that experience, right? So it would have kept information flowing. Open-ended questions also help you focus on the problem instead of the person that you're angry with. So we very much, when we don't like something, we very much problematize the person, right? We will call the person a name. He's a liar, she's a slut, he's a good for nothing, right? We have words that we call people, right? We'll label people. So here's what's great about open-ended questions. I don't have to assume what somebody means by the thing, right? So they're calling the person a problem by name calling. And if I really want to understand, but what's the thing you have a problem with, I can even ask about the problem, the word that they use. So I'm going to use slut as an example, right? So somebody goes, "Oh my goodness, she is such a slut." Now, in your mind, you're thinking, "Okay, I know what a slut is." So very often we don't ask questions about things because we assume we know what the person is talking about. When very often we don't really understand the experience that person is expressing. Because just because I know what a slut is, I don't know what this person means when they're calling this other person a slut. Right? And so if I'm going to ask open-ended questions to get like, what things are you talking about? Then I could say, "Okay, when you say slut, help me understand what that means," right? Because then one person might say, "Oh, well, ever since she broke up with that last guy, she's just been running around sleeping with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and sometimes Louise." And I mean, HIV is still a real thing, and chlamydia, you can get rid of it, but it's no fun to have. And I'm just like, I don't think she's thinking this thing all the way through, right? So now the thing that this person, their feelings are worried, the person's health and safety is important to them, and the thing that they're talking about is sex. Right? So that would be the thing. Then somebody else, they go, "Oh my goodness, she is just such a slut." And you go, say slut, "What's that about for you?" Right? And they go, "Well, I mean, the way that she dresses, she has her boobs hanging all out and her skirts are so short." And I mean, no, it's not women's fault when they get grabbed in the alley, but somebody's gonna grab her in the alley dressed like that. And I mean, she really has to think about what kind of messages is she sending when she's just showing everything. I mean, leave something to the imagination. Jeez. Okay, so this person, they're also worried about this person's safety, right? But they're talking about a different thing. This person isn't talking about sex. They're talking about clothing, right? A whole different person goes, "Oh my goodness, my upstairs neighbor, she gotta be a slut." You go, "Okay, so when you say she gotta be a slut, what do you mean by that?" "Well, I mean, I don't know about her, but I have to get up in the morning to go to work, and she just has people coming in and out of her apartment all times of the night, up and down the steps. I'm hearing them up and down the steps, keeping me woke. And I can't get any sleep because she just is having people in and out all the time." Okay. So now this person feels disrupted. What is happening to my phone? This person feels disrupted. They also, their sleep and their rest is important to them. Quiet is important to them, but they're not talking about sex or clothing like the last two sluts were about. This person is talking about visitors, is the thing that they don't like the way this thing is going, right? And so 3 different people said slut, and when you ask about it, what they're talking about 3 different things. And so you get to hear the actual problem. This takes us into the next bullet where it says open-ended questions helps to break things into manageable pieces. So you will hear people saying umbrella terms, right? Like everybody around here should get respect. Or these kids around here are so disrespectful, right? So you go, what do you mean by respect? Because respect is not a manageable piece. If you say respect, you mean one thing by it. I mean something totally different when I'm talking about respect. So when I go, what do you mean by respect? They go, oh, they don't give me my phone messages when, you know, like when I come home and they talk to me like I'm a child. I'm not a child, I'm the parent. Okay, now these are 2 different manageable pieces. One piece is phone messages, and one piece is the way communication is happening, right? So we got communication and phone messages. So now we understand when this person is saying they want some respect, they are talking about 2 different things, right? So now we have manageable pieces that we can actually talk about. Okay, my phone totally just now went dead. Let's see if I can share it. I don't understand how that's possible when it's been plugged up all day. I guess it wasn't plugged up enough. That's just bizarre. I think the aliens came and snatched stuff out of my phone. Okay, but I think I can pull it up right here. Files, that's even better.
So aliens, everybody has a different definition of that, so.
That's right. I blame aliens for everything. That's exactly right. All right. I'm sorry, you gotta bear looking at my screen real quick.
Who are we looking at, Erica? Oh,
Those are my children and my best friend's children. So one of my best friends killed himself in 2015, and those are his children and my children that were on that picture. Okay, here, yay! Okay, so now we got the open-ended questions handout again on the screen. And so that's how it breaks things down into manageable pieces, that you can take something vague that people say, oh, I feel like he's not being responsible. What kind of things are you talking about? Well, he lets his car engine just run out of oil. Okay, so car is a manageable piece, right? So you can like get manageable pieces when you ask open-ended questions. It also protects your neutrality, right? And so what that means is you might be listening to somebody and you realize you don't want them to think that you agree or disagree with anything that they're saying right now. However, you do have questions, right? Like I do want to understand what the heck you are talking about right now. And so there are times when whether you're a mediator or whether you are just listening to people and you're in a safe space for them to vent, or you know you're in a conversation where you're trying to work things out with somebody, asking open-ended questions can really help, instead of you going, well, I mean, did you do what she said you did? That's a yes or no, right? Or somebody goes, oh, this is my favorite. When you want to ask why, so this warning at the bottom, in the middle, asking why often puts people on the defensive. Often we ask people like, why did you do that, right? Or why do you think that? And that makes people feel defensive, and so you don't seem like a safe in that moment. And so I often, when I find myself wanting to ask like the why kinds of questions, instead I go, So help me understand how you came to that conclusion. Or can you walk me through your decision-making process, right? So instead of saying, why did you do that? I go, so can you walk me through your decision-making process? Help me understand how you came to that decision. That's different than why did you do that, right? Break through code words and euphemisms, right? So somebody goes, he's pretty sensitive, right? So this is what I call somebody put a box in front of you because they said sensitive and you know that it means something, but you aren't sure what they mean right now, right? And so instead of you going through a list of closed-ended questions, are you saying he can't stay in the sun too long? Are you saying you think he's a wuss? Are you saying, right, instead of you trying to figure out what sensitive means, you don't have to take responsibility for it at all. You can break through that code word and go, okay, so when you say sensitive, what do you mean by that? Something that that's really cool to me about doing that, when people try to throw bombs, you know, like, or like they sit a box in front of you where they're saying something and you're like, that means something, but they're not really saying what they mean. I like asking open-ended questions because it helps people take responsibility for what it is they're saying, or it helps people realize, actually, I don't want to go down to what I was just saying. I changed my mind, right? So if I go, oh, what do you mean by sensitive? In this moment now, this person has a choice. They're either going to really tell me what they meant when they said the guy was sensitive, or they're going to realize they were being a jerk by calling him sensitive. And now that I'm asking to unpack it, they can decide, you know what, I shouldn't be saying this about him. So let me back away from that, right? And that's absolutely fine too. The last two things I'll open-ended is that it helps to focus people on solutions and helps generate more creative solutions. So when people are saying leaders should be accountable, right? Open-ended questions that focus on problem solving and solutions are, okay, what does accountability look like? Right? When you say police should be accountable, what does accountability look like? When you say you're looking for people to be more honest and transparent, what are the kind of things that would need to happen so that people felt safe being honest in this space? What are the kind of things that need to happen so that people can be transparent, right? And so like really helping people think about, often we throw out our values, right? We will weaponize our values even all the time in conversations. And we don't as often stop to go, well, what would that actually look like? What are all the ways? And so open-ended questions help us help people think about that. Like, okay, so if our leaders were transparent, what would need to happen? What would that actually look like? And how could we get it, right? So that's the open-ended questions. That's what open-ended questions would do. At the bottom here of this handout, it says helpful ways to show that you're trying to understand. And so this is how you can ask open-ended questions. And this suggestion, you see they're like fill in the blank kinds of things, because the suggestion is you want to take something that the person actually said and fill in the blank with it. Because often what we'll do is we'll hear people talk and we start having questions about things we assume that wasn't stuff that they said. That those questions, because your questions are not coming from something they actually said, your questions have built into them some assumptions you might be making, right? And so it's better if you go, okay, so when you said blank, say more about that. Or help me understand more about blank. Or when you say irresponsible, what kind of things do you mean, right? What do you mean by racist, right? When you say he's a slob, or he never tells you anything, what's that about for you? Right? So you can stick things people actually said into the blank and ask questions. What you want to be careful about is still how you ask the question. So pay attention to your tone. When you said racist, what you mean by that? right? Then, okay, so when you said racist, help me understand what you mean by that. It still might be a hard question. It still might be a challenging conversation. And our tone, we want to sound more like, I'm curious about what it is you're saying. I want to understand what it is you're saying. Not, I'm using these open-ended question words, but I'm judging you, right? We want to make sure we're not coming across. Also, be careful that you don't use open-ended questions to still judge people by like the question that or taking their side. So somebody goes, oh, my neighbors are just so dirty, right? So we don't want to say more about how your neighbors are dirty. Now you just now said is you agree that the neighbors are dirty and you want to hear more about it, which is different from saying when you say the neighbors are dirty, what do you mean by that? Right? That's very different. Now that doesn't sound like I'm agreeing that they are dirty or not. I'm going, what do you mean by it when you say it? Right? So it's the difference between talk more about how your neighbors are dirty. No. What do you mean when you say your neighbors are dirty? Yes. Yep. Okay. All right. I wanted to put I'm gonna put event up here. Which one can I pick? Oh, maybe I gotta close this one. All right, so this will be of an example of like event somebody is having about their neighbor. And so what we're gonna do right now is practice asking what kind of questions could you ask this person? So they said, that dog barks all night long. It's ridiculous and quite rude if you ask me. First of all, you shouldn't own a dog unless you know how to keep him quiet throughout the wee hours of the night. How are your neighbors supposed to sleep? But they are just inconsiderate of people's feelings in general. They play music so loud, you think we live next to a nightclub. What the hell is that all about? And I don't understand how they think it's okay to turn that music up full blast. And even if they like for their yard to be a mess, I care about my property value. This is a beautiful neighborhood and I love living here and I want to keep it that way. But when these fools next door can't even figure out how to mow their friggin' lawn, it just sucks looking out of my window. Okay. So normally we use this, you can see it says topics and values and feelings. So normally we use this for people to practice on the feelings, values, and topics, which was the last training I just did. This time what I want you to do is take things that this person said and ask an open-ended question about something that they said. So you can get some practice unpacking something or asking for more information about something. So feel free to unmute yourself.
There was so much in there. I don't know. I don't know where to start.
It's on the screen if you want to see it. So you just pick anything out of there that you could ask a question about.
I'd say, so it sounds like you really value your neighborhood.
Yeah, so right now we're not practicing reflections. Right now I'm asking you what questions could you ask this person? So that would be a reflection of one of their values. What's a question you could ask them to work on understanding the experience they're having and what they're saying?
What do you mean by all night long?
Very good, right? And that's a really good one. So I'm gonna give that some snaps. Snaps means you did something good, right? Right, because now, and that's really interesting, right? We can hear people say all night long, and in your mind, you automatically have a picture of what all night long is. right? But you don't know what this person means when you go. So when you say all night long, what do you mean by that, right? You find out they mean until 12 a.m. And you're like, that's not all night long. You may or may not agree that that's all night long, but you get to better understand what they mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
How about, do they ever mow their lawn?
Okay, so if you ask, do you ever mow your lawn? Is that a closed-ended
They-
question or an open-ended question?
Oh, oh.
The closed-ended question. So this person vents and you say to them, oh, do the neighbors ever mow their lawn? That's gonna just get you a yes or no.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you love about your neighborhood?
Very good, because they said, I love living here and I want to keep it that way. So what do you love about your neighborhood? Very good. Somebody give me a question you can ask though. So turn this closed-ended question, right? Instead of going, do they ever mow their lawn?
Tell me a little
What
bit
could you
more
ask?
about what a messy yard means to you.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
How about, have you talked to them about any of these things?
Say it again. What's the question?
Have you talked to them about any of the things that are bothering you?
Is that an open-ended question or a closed-ended question? Have you talked to them about any of these things?
Close in. Never mind.
Right. And so what does that question tell them you think?
That
they haven't.
That they haven't and that they should.
Yeah.
And so is something wrong with them if they telling you and haven't to, right? And so, so again, taking things they said and filling in the blank instead of you asking them questions about things they haven't said. So if they haven't mentioned, I talked to them about it and this is what happened, then you don't want to ask questions about things you think they should be doing, because now what that comes across as is I'm venting to you and you're judging what you think I should be doing to fix it. And so one challenge is, again, because we are often the fixers, us helpers of the world, we start asking questions to try to jump straight to fixing things. Right, like, because that question says, oh, I have a suggestion. If you talk to them, you could probably clear a lot of this up. But they may have very valid reasons why they don't talk to the people next door.
Erica, can you describe what ownership of a dog means?
Very good. Yes, you can. They say you shouldn't even own a dog unless you keep them quiet. Okay, well, say more about what you think ownership should look like. Yeah.
Okay. So you said they were...
Going back to the other person, you could say, so how have you addressed this situation so far?
Again, that's you trying to fix it and your suggestion that they should have done something.
So I could say, what have you done at this point so far?
So I see you are hell-bent on getting them to go fix it. And what I'm saying right now is, this is a practice in asking questions to get more information and help people and build understanding. And so taking something they did not say and asking about it is not you working on understanding them. It is you seeing how they feel about your suggestion. So this question, right, they haven't mentioned anything in this event about things they've done to address it. So if you listen to this vent and you start asking, well, what have you done to address it? That question says to them that you think they should do something to address it, right? And so I'm not saying that those kind of questions are never helpful. I'm saying those are the kind of questions that should only be asking you to help them think through and get your advice. But when we're at the I'm just building understanding the experience you're having, understanding somebody's experience is not the same thing as telling people what think they should do and asking them about that. So that's what I call a suggestion question.
Erica,
so how about if you ask, so you said they were inconsiderate. Can you tell me more about what that means?
Absolutely. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with that inconsiderate also.
Yeah.
What does inconsiderate mean for you?
Yeah.
Explain more of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
well,
even,
how about
Oh, go.
Oh, I was going to say, how about, they say people are coming in and out. Well, I thought they said somewhere that people were coming in and out.
Oh,
all
sorry.
night long.
That
And
other event that I did a few minutes ago. That's not this.
oh, that was the other one. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Would it be considered a close-ended question if you said, wow, what a drag. Has it been going on a long time? Is that just useless information, or just, I don't know, just to sort of.
It's a judgmental.
It's a judgment, right?
It is, okay.
So you saying, wow, what a drag, is you agreeing with them that these people are jerks, right?
Okay.
Talking about. But people has it going on for a long time. They haven't mentioned how long it was going on. So that information may or not even be relevant to them,
right?
Like the amount of time that's happening, right? And so that's just something you're curious about. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Right. So sometimes we ask questions that seem like we're investigating,
right,
or questions like we're just being nosy.
Right.
That's why it's better to fill in the blank with stuff they actually said.
But for example, when you see, what do you see when you look outside your window?
That's very good. When they say it just sucks looking out of my window, and you go, oh, well, what do you see when you look out your window? That would be a great question.
So if someone says that it's rude, you could ask them what rude means. But what if you were to take it the other direction and say, you say that it's quite rude. If it were not quite rude, what would be different for you?
Okay, so that would be when you're if you're helping them fix it question. So I see you like to ask all the questions. Is that Rosanna?
Yeah.
Your name?
I'm just trying to build on the quite rude. So if I could just ask, well, what does rude look like for you? I could just ask that.
Yes. Yes. What do you mean by rude? Yeah.
Excuse me, it seems like where there's so much detail and so much it's hard to know where to start. But I thought the question about tell me about your neighborhood. This sentence, this is a beautiful neighborhood and I love living here. That could open up a lot of possibilities for follow-up, couldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so again, it would be most helpful. Tell me about your neighborhood is one way to go, but it's even more powerful when you stick in the words that they actually said. So when you said it's a beautiful neighborhood, say more about what's beautiful about it to you. Right? When you say you love living here, what kind of things do you love?
Yeah, and that might lead to how long has this relationship been, or how long have you for instance, the response could be, I've lived here all my life.
Right. And so and if that's what's important to them, right? If the amount of time that they've lived here is important, if that's what a part of the love is about, they're going to say that. And this is also why it's important to pay attention to the intention behind your question. Sometimes we're looking for a particular answer, and that's why we ask a question. And then people give us a different answer, and so then we feel stuck because we're like, oh yeah, that's not what I thought you were about to say. So be careful that even if you're asking, oh, when you say you love living there, what do you mean by that? What do you love about it? If the person goes, oh, I love it, like I just moved around here and blah, blah, blah. If you were thinking, oh, they're going to tell me how long they've been living, like that they've been there a long time, or it's been happening for a long time, and you found out, oh, they just moved there 2 weeks ago, now you're going to be kind of thrown off, right? So just make sure that you're asking because you really want to hear what they are saying is important to them, not because you already have an agenda for where you're trying to make the conversation go.
How about what kind of a time schedule are they on? I mean, is the time schedule a lot different than yours, or something on that?
So again, you want to think about, why am I asking questions about things they didn't say?
Well, they said that they're up all night, and I'm thinking that maybe they could have some understanding about a different schedule.
Right, but what I'm saying is that is an analysis that you made, and now you're asking questions about your analysis. Because they didn't mention the other person's schedule. They didn't even mention their schedule in real life.
They said how our neighbor is supposed to get to sleep.
Yeah, so you can, so when you say how a neighbor's supposed to get sleep, what's that about for you? That's different from you going, well, what about their schedule? Do you know that, are they on a different schedule from you? This person didn't mention anybody's schedule. They just mentioned sleep is being interrupted. I even want to point out that how it can be important sometimes to ask questions about the things that you think are hot button things, right? So when somebody said something and you're like, oh, they said that just to be sarcastic or something. So right, when they say the music is so loud you think we live next to a nightclub, you could ask about that. So when you say it's like living next to a nightclub, what do you mean by that? Right? Even though you think they said that just to be sarcastic, it still opens up like the experience that they're actually talking about. Yeah.
I know you can't, with the whiteboard up, you can't, or the document, you can't see the chats. I don't think there's a question or a suggestion here. How is your relationship with them usually?
That's a yes.
Okay, so it is, that's not, it is an open-ended question, but it's still a question based on something you want to know that they haven't talked about. So this person hasn't talked about their relationship with the neighbors and that they're worried about it or don't like it or anything. They are talking about the lawn, they're talking about music, they're talking about the dog, right? Those are the things that they're talking about. They haven't mentioned their relationship. And so again, I think we often jump to thinking of questions of things. So what happens is when people talk, we start playing a movie in our head, right? And sometimes the questions we ask are still in the movie that they told us, and sometimes the questions we ask are from our own movie. And so a question like, what's your relationship like normally? That question comes from your movie, because as you heard them talk, you started envisioning a relationship that they have with this person. So you're asking about a relationship. They may not have any relationship with the person. They may just be their next door neighbor and they don't like the stuff that's happening.
There is one sentence there though that talks about their part in the neighborhood. How are your neighbor? It says, but they are just inconsiderate of other people's feelings in general.
Right. So you can
That's a pretty broad statement.
It is broad. So you would ask about that, right? So you can say. So when you say they're inconsiderate of other people's feelings, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
And they may say something that has to do with relationship, but they might not. They may say, oh, also the parking. Like they will just throw these parties and have people park and take up people's driveways and space, and people can't even get to their house for blocks. That's inconsiderate, right? May not have anything to do with a relationship. So that's what I'm saying, is that we want to be careful that we don't hear things people say, then assume something that's going on, and then ask questions about our assumptions. It's better to take things people said and just fill in the blank of your question with something they actually said, so that your assumption doesn't come into it at all.
I just have a little bit of a question.
Yeah.
Like,
wait a minute, I'm gonna 1 second. I'm gonna mute everybody, and then you can unmute yourself to ask your question. Okay, so unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself to ask your question.
Okay, all right. What I was saying is that for me, listening to that, it's overwhelming, you know, and am I doing this as a person to person, or am I a practitioner, a facilitator, and a mediated solution? Or is this just talking to a friend? Because when you were reading it, I thought, my gosh, this is impossible to solve. You got you got at least 4 problems you're dealing with here. And I don't know where to start. to dig through that. It's like a jumbled up, twisted mess. How do we ever resolve it? This is going to take hours and hours to sort this thing out. And how much time do we have?
Okay.
And you see what I mean?
Yeah, so I can answer your question.
Does that question?
Yeah, so the first part is, this is just an example that I'm using for you to practice asking questions on. So it really doesn't matter if you're the mediator or listen to a friend. This was just for you to practice. Oh, when I hear somebody talk, here's a way I can ask questions. And my point too is, you can use this way of asking questions, whether it's a regular conversation that you're having with somebody, or if you're a mediator and a part of your job is to help people think about solutions, and if a part of your role is to help build understanding. So open-ended questions, in this way that I'm teaching it, is a part of the 50-hour training that we train mediators with. Right? And so during the venting stage of the mediation, mediators are using open-ended questions to unpack things. What do you mean by wee hours of the night? What do you mean by live next to a nightclub? What do you mean by your property value? What do you mean by the yard is a mess, right? So really getting information so you can get all of those feelings and values and topics. Then open-ended questions are used later in the problem-solving phase of the mediation to go, so earlier you were saying cleanliness in the yard is important to you. Now that you're working on getting ideas about the yard, what are all the ideas you have about getting the cleanliness that you're looking for? Earlier, you said you love the neighborhood, and consistency with how the neighborhood looks is really important to you. What ideas do you have now to keep that consistency and the beauty in the neighborhood that you like? Earlier, around music, you were saying quiet and sleep was important to you. What are all the ideas you have about music that will honor the quiet that you're looking for, right? So that's what we do with questions later. But in the venting part, we ask questions to unpack stuff and go toward the heat about things that people are saying.
Could you ask them what of those things, because it is all over the place. Could you ask them, so out of those things that you mentioned, what is most important to you, or what?
So when I'm functioning as a mediator, I'm thinking about it as everything they said is important. So I'm listening to feelings, values, and topics. So here, the topics are the specific or concrete things that the person said. I have conflict about this thing and that thing and that thing, right? So the topics in this particular event are dog, lawn, or yard, however you name that. You might call it yard if you think the lawn is a part of the yard, or you might separate it and call one topic yard, one topic lawn, and then the last topic is music. So those are 3 or 4 things that are the things these people are saying. I have conflict about these things with my neighbors: the yard, the music, the dog, right? And I have all of these feelings and values about it. I feel disturbed, and consideration is important to me. I value my sleep. I feel disgusted when I look out of my window, right? They got all these feelings and values around these 3 or 4 topics. And so our listening stage of the mediation process is asking questions about the things that they're saying, so that we can hear all of the feelings and values around these 3 or 4 topics. And then there's a brainstorming stage of the process where you take one topic at a time and you would brainstorm each topic based on the feelings and values each person had around that topic.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I heard you say, don't ask why, and that, is really important. But how? On the questions that she asked, so the one about, what's that about? To ask her, how do you think that you want to ask that if we were to get a chance to talk to them? How do you want to do that? Because she says, what the hell is that all about, right? That's how she put it. Mm-hmm. And, that might not sound, the best to, how does she want to do that? Do you recommend that? How? be used?
So when it depends on, well, for me as a mediator and in a regular conversation, I would ask it the same way. In the model of mediation that I teach in and operate from as a mediator, if I use their language, I don't change their language, because however they said it is what they meant. And so if they say, she is such a hoe, I go, help me understand what you mean by hoe. They go, she is such a slut. I go, when you say slut, what do you mean by that, right? So although because I'm unpacking the explosive language, and so, and there's some things that I might ask about, that I'm asking about after I'm reflecting. So when somebody goes, what the hell is that all about? I'm going, it sounds like you feel confused about what's happening with the music. Say more about that. Right, and that's how I would ask that. Carter, stop it! And that's how I would ask that.
That was a barking dog, just to give us some reality there.
Just to give us some reality. Somebody must be on our porch, because you know, little dogs are the ones that's always being the guard dog of the house. And so somebody must have walked past. Carter, stop it.
I can't believe it's already 6 o'clock. This hour just flew by.
It did.
And this day it's been wonderful to spend the day with you, Erica. And
thank you so much.
Can we do a saying thank you, everybody?
Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Stop it.
And you are spending the evening with youth tonight, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm now gonna get an Uber and go down. There's a youth-led protest that's been happening since 4 o'clock-ish, my time. So I'm gonna head down there now, and they're probably at the space where they're doing poetry and stuff. So I'm gonna go and listen to what they have to say about life.
Do you know what the youth are asking for?
Yeah, so they are asking for police abolition, not just reform. So these youth believe that the structure and system of policing is one that is toxic for society and that it needs to be dismantled, and there's something else that we need to build in its place.
Do you think we could invite you back to Minnesota with a couple of those youth?
Amazing! Yeah,
we'd love to hear.
Let's email about that.
All righty.
Well, to add on to that, I work with Antonio Smith, who is the Brooklyn Park leader for United Cities United, and that's their work. They work with Black males from the age of 13 to 30, I believe is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a weekly, I want to say it's on Thursday. I mean, you could talk with them then too, because they have a weekly Zoom call.
Okay. Yeah, so it would be great if we could get I saw somebody put in the chat there are youth there who are also asking for police abolition. It would be great to have youth in Baltimore and youth there talking to each other about their ideas about how to get the message out about police abolition and why they think it's important and all of that. Oh, yes, so that'll be our next project, is we'll get all the youth on a Zoom together. Oh, it just got me so excited. Yeah. Thank you all so much.
That's awesome. You know, I was just telling some friends of mine that they need to just get rid of that police department over in Minneapolis, because it's been decades and it hasn't been reformed. They just can't reform it. So get rid of and they said to me, you mean get rid of it all? And I said, just get rid of it. It's not working.
That's what the youth are saying.
So
they said all the police.
Well, what do we put in place? What's that?
Did you see how many times they've actually
So what do we put in its place?
Did you actually see how many times that they used that hold that they did on George Floyd? I want to say that they've used it 44 other times.
40.
And people haven't died from it, but people have sure enough blacked out from it. So this is not the first time that they've done that.
Blacked out 40 times.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say this, and then I really have to go. I I think the question about what do we put in its place, that is not, that is a whole process, right? And so I don't think youth need to have an answer right now for, well, what will we put in its place? Because that would take community collaborative processes and conversations to figure out, because what gets built in its place might look different in every city, right? Because each city would need to answer that question for itself. So I don't think they need to have exact answers about exactly what it would look like, what the new thing would look like, for them to be able to say, I don't know what it would look like, but I know this is not the thing we need, right? And I think, and so what they're asking for is for people to acknowledge that the systems of policing in America are broke and corrupt and have never worked for hundreds of years, ever since they started. They've never worked for Black and brown people. They've never worked for poor people. And so there needs to be, so first acknowledge that this system is not one that has been good for large demographics of people, and acknowledge that there definitely needs to be something to replace it, because only then do we start conversations with policymakers and community and all of that about how to dismantle and how to build and how to transition into something else. People first have to admit that it should be abolished in the first place, and that's what they're asking for. Yeah. So, forward to working with you all again and bringing the youth and everything.
Well, and
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing us back to some really basic communication skills, because we have some really difficult conversations.
Yeah.
In our near future, we're in them right now,
Yeah.
and with frazzled, sleep deprived, weary, hurt, angry, and with all of that going on, the need for some really important conversations. So thank you for bringing us back to some of these very basic tools and skills and frameworks that pulled us into this work in the first place.
Yay. Yay. I'm glad.
Thank
you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll get these links out to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for spending the day with us.
Yeah. Bye-bye.